Andy describes a room.
Kind of grey, 12.5 centimeters. There's a plant, the same color, and it is definitely bigger than 1 meter. Hello, and welcome to Andy Describes a Room. It's episode 2. We're describing a different part of the room today, so let's just get into it. We're going to be describing the upper part of the corner of the room we described last week. Last week we talked about 3 plants and a guitar. So today I'm casting my view up to the top part, the upper part of that corner. So first of all, immediately your eyes are drawn to there's a picture hanging on the wall. It's got a white frame. The width of the painting is a smaller length than the height of the painting. It has a sort of like bevel in it. I would estimate that the width of the painting is about 35 centimeters, and the height of it's not a painting, it's more like a print, I think. I don't know. I don't think it's a painting, but it's maybe, I don't know, it's a picture, it's art. Anyway, the height of the art is about maybe kind of over, maybe 60 centimeters, maybe 65 centimeters, I don't know. That you can see there's a bit of glass, like a plane of glass, a pane of glass that is sort of like protecting, I guess, the piece of art from the elements. You can see that because there's a slight reflection. We can tell that it's not the actual artwork. There's just kind of like the light is a little bit like, you can see almost like I think if I look closely, I can see it's a distorted version of the plant. Basically, you can see some leaves. They're a bit smaller. They're kind of in a strange, maybe the word is refracted sort of way. You can kind of see, but it's not dominating the picture. It's just in the little corner to the left, the lower leftmost corner. You can see it there. And no, it doesn't take away from the overall impression that the picture gives. So the picture is there's a woman lying on a towel as she's sunbathing in a swimsuit, and she's like reading something, or she's on her phone maybe. And that's not a big part of the picture. It's just the smallest part. But I guess your eye is drawn to that first. Because it's like the only human figure in the picture. It's on a rooftop, I think you can see, and it's a roof terrace that she's on, and it reminds you, I suppose, of the pandemic maybe. That I remember I was in the pandemic, and it was a bit like that. People were, using the roof terraces a lot more. And there's a cat. There's a kind of above her, there's a wall, there's a ledge, there's a towel hanging on a washing line, and another garment slightly further along. There's a kind of, I guess the word is terracotta roof that's slanted above her. She's in the center bottom of the picture. It's very small. If you were to measure the female figure, it would be I would say the length of it would be maybe 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters. It's not taking up much of the picture. She's wearing a white hat. I failed to mention that before. And I don't know if I said this, but she's lying on her stomach, so her back is to the sun. And then you have like some kind of like architecture, I don't know, like roof, and so the walls are whitewashed, and the roofs and the roof terrace are kind of red terracotta color. And then there's also tiled roofs. So there's kind of 2 styles of roof that are depicted in the picture. Some of them are tiled with kind of various like grey, creamy colored tiles. And there's there's some really flat kind of surfaces, almost like an MC Escher painting of kind of. And so there's kind of it almost looks like 3D shapes of of a classic, the classic cube, like almost a schoolroom kind of cube, cuboid type thing. Or like when you draw on a piece of paper, if you draw, like, how you make things look 3D, it's like that of a cube, if you draw like almost like the peace symbol, like a line going up to one side and a line going up to the other side, and then so like if you imagine you have a vertical line that is perpendicular to the floor going up, okay, and then it stops at some point, and then at that point at which it stops, you have two more lines coming off from it in the peace symbol style. Like the angle from that original line for both of them on each side is going to be something like, it's definitely more than 90 degrees, but not like, definitely not 180 degrees, because that's just the straight line carrying on. So you're talking about, it's closer to 90 degrees than it is 180 degrees. So maybe we're talking about 100 degrees, maybe 110 degrees, maybe 120 degrees, I don't know. But basically what it forges is a kind of illusion that there's depth, and it creates a cuboid sort of shape, basically. And that's what that is basically the flat, the house that's depicted in this image. And then there's a window, there's a rectangular window, very small window, about the same size as a cat. That's dark, and then up to the top left, there's another terrace. You see the terrace that she's on, the reader, and then in the top left you have another terrace where there's a really nice shadow, and the shadow has got kind of a step to it. It's like one part of the shadow is like, it's almost like a lightning bolt, in the sense of the line. So imagine like the line starts at the edge of the painting, and it's traveling to the right, okay, from the left. So it starts on the left hand side of the painting, imagine like the edge, and it's going to the right, but it's not going at a 90-degree angle, it's going at more like a kind of 110-degree angle. In fact, when I look at it, it's actually it's parallel to one of the lines that made up the that created the illusion of the walls of this flat, this building that I described earlier. So it's coming off the side at a kind of 120-degree angle or something like that, and then sort of like halfway between where this shadow eventually ends up and where it starts, it stops, and then it takes it goes back on itself a little bit, but almost in a 90-degree angle to the left. It goes up just a tiny bit, like we're talking about 1 centimeter, and then carries on in a parallel trajectory to what it had been before. So if you can imagine, that creates a kind of lightning bolt like kind of shape. But it's really, I'm just describing the outline of the shadow. Is what I'm describing. So you have a shadow that it looks like a step. It looks like just one step in a staircase that you're seeing, and then the other part of the terrace is terracotta. So you can see that there's a shadow falling on it, and then just in the top corner, both top corners, in fact, the top left and the top right, you just have a few tiles poking through that suggests that these buildings go on and on off the scene. The frame is white, and so there's a lot of white in the picture, and terracotta and grey, and the woman's skin is kind of almost a terracotta color as well. So there's kind of like a consistent, the cat's white, so there's a lot of the colors are like very similar, sort of like 3 main tones, I guess. Okay, so I think that's the painting, or the picture that's been described. So let's move on. Looking to the right hand side here, basically where the edge of that wall, I don't know if it's like the south wall or the west wall or whatever wall it is. I think where does the sun rise from? The sun rises in in the east. So maybe it's the east wall. So let's call it the east wall. So where the east wall meets the south wall, maybe like north, west, like west, east, south. I think it's the south wall. So where the east wall meets the south wall, basically that line, you have running along that line, you have a white cable that has like every, so if I start my eyes going down, and obviously we know from last week's episode, like that at the bottom of the root, like near the floor, there's a guitar. So if I'm looking at the guitar, here, that's where the kind of the bottom of the wall starts, and then I start, like my eyes start to travel up, then I'm looking at this cable, and it's right up against the wall, and even to the point where where to the edge, even to the point where at times you can't really see it, you don't see it's there, and then there's a little bit that's just slightly exposed that you can see. But the main point I want to get across is that there's like these little things, and I guess their job is to like hold the wire there in place. They are like periodically, like at intervals, they are apparent. It's just keeping the wire in place. I'm guessing if they weren't there, the wire would be a bit looser, we'd see a bit more. So there's probably a correct word for what those are. Cable ties isn't quite right, I don't think, because a cable tie is going to be something you use to tie lots of cables together, and that's not what this is doing. This is more like a support for the cable, or a kind of cable hider, or a tidier. Like it seems to keep it a bit tidier, like against the wall. You don't want that cable being loose, so a cable fastener or something. And they're probably about they're kind of like, they're probably like 1 centimeter in kind of like height or something, and maybe roughly the same lengthwise, or maybe slightly longer lengthwise. So they're kind of like 1 centimeter high, and maybe like 1.5 centimeters long or 2 centimeters long. And I don't know what they're made of, but they're white as well. So it's like the wall is white, they are white, everything's white. So it's done to try and kind of like make you not really see it, I think. So then if you carry on your eye moving up, you will eventually come to a switch, a kind of, and this is cream. So it's like, maybe when it was first installed, it would have been white, but perhaps it's faded over time, and it's a square switch. So it has an outer casing which kind of holds the switch, which is like, well, okay, and it's square. So the length and the height are the same, and it has 4 sides. Okay, so we know what square is, and what you have is probably about 5 centimeters wide, maybe 5 centimeters, maybe less, maybe like 4 centimeters wide and 4 centimeters high, or something like that, maybe 5. And actually the switch itself is more or less the exact same size as the outer casing holding it. It's a thick one that you could kind of press it with like the palm of your hand. You could press the whole switch. It's not the kind of switch you would flick with just one finger, which is perhaps more typical. Maybe some people are more used to that. This one is like a square, and a thick, wide square switch. And the moment you can see, presumably it's off, because if I follow where the cable, so to describe the cable, so it's parallel to the line that travels from the floor to the ceiling that connects the east wall to the south wall. Okay, so it's parallel to that until it gets to about 3 centimeters before the switch. So if my eye is looking from the bottom and going up, so at that point, if 3 centimeters below, it starts to deviate from that line. So it starts to come away from the parallel it starts to no longer be parallel, and it comes off at an angle, and it's definitely an acute angle, and we're talking about something like 30 degrees, okay? And it comes off, and then it continues until it goes into the switch, the square switch, in the center of the switch. So halfway between each of the two sides, it's there, okay? So it goes into the switch halfway, and then the switch, actually, the part that you would press, it like halfway from bottom to top, halfway from bottom to top, not from left to right. So we're talking about a horizontal line that cuts across in the center of this switch. There's a slight like white line, and you can't see from where I'm sitting, but you wonder if it maybe is a little, is the word divot? I'm not sure, like a bevel, I don't know, like a little ridge. Is a ridge perhaps not right? Like a little groove. I think that's a good word to say, like a groove that goes from left to right, like a line. And is it exactly in the middle? Maybe, I think so. Or it might be slightly below, but anyway, from top to bottom. So you got that. And then there's also like a little mark in the top half of the switch to the right. There's just a little dark mark, and you wonder if maybe somebody had a dirty finger and they pressed it, or maybe, is it a piece of dust in it, or I don't know, some sort of thing. And as I say, the color of the switch, both the outer casing and the switch itself, is a cream color. So it kind of looks like maybe over time it was a white that's faded. When we then look up, almost as a mirror image of kind of what's going on below with regards to the cable, the wire, what happens is, from the top left-hand corner to the top right-hand corner, so halfway between those two corners, there is, right in the middle, the wire sort of begins again, and this time it's traveling in the opposite direction to how it was in the part below, and it's going back towards the wall to then become parallel again. So what I mean is, it's traveling in a 30 degree, well no, now this time it's more like a kind of, maybe like a 60 degree angle. Yeah, more like a 60 degree angle. Now it's traveling towards the wall, okay? So if you measured the angle, I'm measuring the angle from the line that is from the top left-hand corner to the right top-hand corner of the switch, that line, okay? If you measure the angle of this wire from the line, so the wire is one of the lines, and the top left-hand corner and the top right-hand corner, that line of the switch, if you measure the angle from between those two lines, on the right-hand side it's going to be like a 60 degree angle, so going that way, and then obviously it would be 120 degree angle if you measured the obtuse angle that's formed on the left-hand side of it. And but if you sort of in reverse took the line that the line that is the line that meets in between the south wall and the east wall, then you have that angle would be, you measure that line. So just to be clear, the line that connects the east wall to the south wall, like that's that line, okay? And then the line of the wire, if you measure those two angles together from, if my eye is starting at the top going down, you are then seeing a 30 degree angle, okay? So it's a mirror image of the one that's below, okay? Just above that, where the cable finally then hits the line that connects the east wall to the south wall, just above where the point at which those two lines meet, there's another one of these cable tidiers, these little things I described earlier. And this it looks to be a little bit smaller than one of the other ones like further down. And then as I cast my eye up, I look further and the cable continues, goes up, and then basically you've got a door frame. So it's running along a door frame, and at some point, and that door frame, I don't want to get into today because that door frame is part of the south wall, and I don't want to get into that today. That will be on another episode. So, but anyway, there is that door frame there, and that door frame kind of provides the line that is where the south wall connects to the east wall, until it stops, obviously, because then there's kind of a good, 70 centimeters or so between the top of the door frame and the ceiling. Okay, and then so the wire continues above along the same line of like the line that connects the south wall and the east wall, along that same line, but it continues above the door frame now, and so it's a bit more prominent. The door frame kind of hides it for most of if you're looking, you look up, the door frame hides it, and then it doesn't, because obviously the wire goes above. And the thing is, now the wire is exposed, and it's not right up against the line now, it's parallel to the line, and it's about 1 centimeter away from it. So, and I think that's because it had been hugging the door frame, so and that meant that it was 1 centimeter away from really where the edge of the exact wall is. So at that point, let's say where the door frame is, you've got 10 centimeters above that, maybe more, maybe like 15 centimeters above that. It takes a 90 degree, what's more or less a 90 degree turn to the left. Okay, and at that point it has one of these cable tidiers. You can't really see it very well, but it must be there otherwise how is it suspended up against the wall? And then you can see, which I didn't realize before, is actually what you've got is 2 cables. So that's kind of like, that was surprising. I didn't really think about that. Although when I do look back down to the square switch that I described earlier, you can see that right next to the door frame, just a little bit poking out, is what looks like maybe another cable, but it's not clear. So I think maybe it is another cable, and then basically at the top, when it diverges and turns to the left, well, not diverges, I don't know, like it's more than that because it's taking a 90 degree turn. I think that's a strong diversion, it takes a 90 degree turn to left, it splits into 2 cables, and what you have is like running from right to left now. Let's say on my eye goes that way, like from right to left for like 3 centimeters, and then we hit another one of these cable supporters or whatever they're called, and it looks a bit different this one. It's probably been hammered into the wall or drilled in or something. I don't know how they fix it to all, but everything's all white, by the way, just to try and not be as kind of seen. But yeah, there's another one. I don't really understand why it's there, but it's there. And then still there's 2 wires again afterwards. So it's almost like the eye of a needle. It's almost like the eye of a needle, that part. But then the next part isn't like a needle. It's like, again, 2 big bits. It's like, almost like the number 8. If you can imagine the number 8, there's a circular part, then there's there are 2 circular parts, but there's kind of a point in the middle of the number 8, where the 2 circular parts meet, right? So that's kind of what this is doing. However, in the number 8, the 2 circular parts are exactly the same size. In this case, the first, and it's not a pure circle either, it's kind of like a distorted oval. It's a thin oval. It's not, and it's not really an oval. It's almost a bit more like a triangle with rounded corners. Hard to describe. But it's much smaller, the first one, where the 2 cable supports are kind of closest together, right up against the edge of the wall, the edge of the wall, So that kind of so-called circular part, but it's not circular. It's not even oval. It's like, kind of a triangular ovalish shape. That one is much, much, much smaller in terms of its area compared to then on the left-hand side, you have this big thing that almost looks like a kind of smile. It's like a mouth that's open a little bit, which is these two cables creating this illusion of, like, imagine each cable, they're running along from right to left, but one of them is dangling much lower than the other one. The top one is a bit more straight in its trajectory, and the other one droops in the kind of the middle, like a curve, like the bottom of a boat, and then goes up towards the end. So it creates the illusion maybe of like a little smile, well, quite a big smile actually, much bigger than a human's, because this second section of the cables, it must be again like maybe like 10 or 15 centimeters long, maybe more. It's quite difficult to estimate these the lengths. So anyway, where that ends, you can't quite see where it ends from my perspective, but there is then a cube, or perhaps a cuboid, but it's like almost a cube in the sense that, like, okay, I think the height and the width are like more or less the same length, but I think maybe the height is slightly higher than the width, but it's cuboid. Basically it's a light, it's a lampshade that's in the cube. It's a white cuboid, and you can tell it's kind of a light fixture, light fitting, and it's white, but then you can see that there's also a section of it that connects it to the wall that's not white, and so I'm assuming that's like the electrical part. And so, well, what I'm assuming is that the light switch, I'm assuming it's a light switch. That switch where the cable runs into, that controls whatever the light is. And you can see, I don't know what material it's made of, but could it be like a kind of plastic? Probably, I think. Because like this, you can see that, for example, it's a cuboid, but what it looks like is that the bottom face, if that makes sense. So you've got on a cuboid or a cube, you've got 6 faces, yeah? The bottom face has been removed, it's not there. From my perspective, I can't see the top face, so I don't know, but maybe that one is removed as well. But the bottom face looks like it's removed, and what you can see is kind of just, the reason I know that is because you can almost see through, like, the white material that the lampshade type thing is made of is somewhat translucent is maybe a better word. Like, you can't see through it, that's transparent, so it's translucent. You can just kind of like see a little bit through it, and you're seeing this kind of darker colored panel that connects the lampshade to the, presumably to the wire, to the electricity or whatever. It's got, and maybe it's also there as a kind of engineering thing to, like, I don't know if the word's engineer, but like to affix it to the wall. And then what's quite interesting is that the 2 cables seem to, or no, now it's only 1 cable carries on from right to left beyond where this light is. So I should say, this light that I've just described is located, so this is kind of like a big reveal, but there's a French window. There's a French window. If I look at the east wall, we're getting ahead of ourselves maybe, because I want to describe this a bit more in another episode. But there's a big French window that dominates the entirety of the east wall. But the cable, the cable is like, the light, is like halfway between the edge of the wall and where the French window begins. And the cable runs from the light to the edge of the French window. Okay, so that's mainly that. And then so there's a curtain rail and a curtain rod that is above where the French window is, okay? And it's, I don't want to describe it just yet, but maybe I'll describe it a little bit. But it's made out of wood. It's a kind of dark wood with like white bits in it as well. Like not white, lighter brown. So it's like but mainly the impression you get is that's like a dark brown. And what you have is like, yeah, it's a cylinder, a very, very long cylinder, and on either side of the French window at the top, you have the thing that holds the cylinder. I don't know if the right word is a stanchion, so that word's coming up to my head here, but I don't know. And it's a very curved, kind of circular. It's like a ball, and it holds the curtain rod, this big long cylinder in place. And they're like a bobble, like kind of almost looks like a hand, but not like it's not without any fingers. So just a hand without any fingers, and a wrist and the start of an arm that goes into the wall, and it's quite difficult. It's very difficult to describe these things accurately, so I'm just trying my best. So we finish off today's episode by describing a plant plot, basically a plant pot that is hanging from the curtain rod. So the curtain rod, and this is just before the French window starts, you have got a plant pot that is hanging, and let's talk about the hanging. So there's this thing that I've decided to call a stanchion, but I'm not sure if that's the right word. This thing that's holding the curtain rod there, that looks like a hand that I just described. On the other side of it, there's still a tiny little bit of the curtain rod is poking out. It's maybe 5, 6, 7 centimeters of the curtain rod. And so hanging on that little part that's poking out is a plant pot, a hanging plant pot. And it's hanging with a string, but it's maybe, is it more like, it's, when I say string, I think about a very, very thin piece of string, but it's not, it's a thick string. It's not rope, it's not that thick, but it's, is it more like twine? Is that the right word? A kind of, it's a light brown, and it has a kind of, you can see where it's hanging, it has a little, it's just kind of looped. It's looped around clearly this curtain rod, and then like you can see that there's a big knot. It's not that big, okay. It's not huge. It's quite big knot in comparison to kind of the rest of the twine. I don't know. There's a knot there, and it's not insignificant. It's not hugely significant. I don't want to give you the wrong impression about the size of it. It's not, but it's a decent sized knot, and it's well, so that's a kind of a focal point where 3 parts of the twine kind of emanate from. So these three it's all part of the same twine, I think, but maybe not. But they all emanate from this knot. And so what you have is a kind of almost like a pyramid shape that is suggested, not real because it doesn't have any faces, it's just empty space, it's gap, but the edges of a pyramid shape are kind of apparent, and they kind of meet together at the top there in that knot that I've described. And if you follow them down, you will see that they're at the base, that's where they meet the plant pot, and you can't see the two pieces of twine, the 2 edges of the pyramid. There are 3 edges of the pyramid. There's one that is kind of like I'm straight onto it and I can see, and that is and it has like a little hole, so I can see the hole where where that piece of twine enters into the plant pot and is clearly suspending it. It's suspended in the air. Whereas the other 2 edges, the other 2 pieces of twine, I can't see where they end because the plant pot itself covers that from my perspective. But obviously I can I can presume that it's going to be a similar thing of like there's a hole I'm going to. So that's the twine that's suspending, holding up the plant pot. And now I want to talk about the plant pot itself. It's a cylindrical shape, and right on the bottom it has a kind of like slightly smaller circular base, basically, that I guess means that if you wanted to, you could use it as a kind of a plant pot that wasn't suspended. But yeah, it's like beveled in the center. You can see that you can't really see exactly what it looks like. There's kind of like a black mark, and you assume it's like the maker's mark, like whatever. So a little black like shape. It's not very big, so you can't see it. And probably if you stood underneath it, you would be able to make it out. And yeah, no, nothing else. And then so the colors of the plant pot are that it's. So if I look at this plant pot, it is it appears, even though you can tell it's a cylindrical shape, it's curved. You can see that. If I look directly on it, it looks like it just has a totally straight side, vertical side. Okay, so if I'm looking at that vertical straight side, halfway between the top point of that side and the bottom point of that side, from top to bottom, imagine there's a dot there. And from that dot, we start drawing a curved line from right to left that goes all around. Now, the line is not curved. It's straight, and it goes and it divides this plant pot into two sections. But from my perspective, it appears curved, even though it's not. It's just that the shape of the plant pot is curved, but this line is kind of a straight line that separates it into an upper section and a lower section. The upper section is a kind of grey-green colour. It's like, I don't know if it's teal, I'm not very good with colours, but maybe it's like a teal, almost like a turquoise, maybe, colour. And it's a little bit like kind of, I don't know if the word is pastel, I don't really know what that means, but for some reason I think I want to say it's like a pastel colour. And then underneath that, on the lower section, is pink. It's a pink, and again, I think the word is like pastel. It's like it's more like a peach, in fact, not exactly pink. It's not bright pink. It's like peach color, and that describes the plant pot. And I think like now I've managed to describe over 2 episodes the entirety of that section of the room as well as I'm ever going to get it. I think maybe, I don't know. Well, hold on. I just want to come back just as a last thing. I just noticed there that just kind of like where the French window begins, that the wire that I described earlier that came from the cuboid shaped light and had travelled originally all the way from the bottom of the like where the guitar was, and all the way up, and then it took a left turn and then went to the light, and now it's over right up there. It looks like it goes basically more or less where the plant pot is. It's not where the plant pot is because it's like it is more or less where the plant pot is, but in the sense that like the plant pot is dangling lower than this, so that wire crosses the twine. Not quite halfway, like less than halfway from bottom to top, less than halfway, if my eyes are going from bottom to top. There's a little point where, just almost exactly where the French window begins, there is a little hole in the wall, and the wire just goes at slightly curved kind of line. It goes into the wall there. And I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. There's shadow, like that wall is all like, maybe just to talk about that there's the plant, okay, from last week, that creates a lot of shadow down the bottom, and then if you look up in the top, you can see that I don't know if it's the the curtain rod creates a little bit of a shadow up on the ceiling, and there's like just shadows in the corner. And what you find is that the east wall is kind of in shadow, and a little bit of that shadow goes on into the south wall, but only not much. And then the south wall is quite light and bright. So that's obviously something to do with like the window. Okay, I think this was a really good episode. So I don't think I have anything else to say. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.